Tonight we are going to have a presentation by our very own Micah Woods, and I will let him take it from here. All right, I'm Micah, the other Micah, and this is how you get a hold of me if you get questions and stuff. Yes, this is a birth year in my Twitter account. It's awesome. It's also in my GitHub, so enjoy. I'm doing a couple new things tonight, so just let me know if there's spelling corrections or things that are in my slides, because I'm using a new gem called Keydown. So I'm just going to edit them right here in place and save them and regenerate them and throw them back up. So it's going to be pretty cool. It's marked down and generates slides. It's really neat. And that's it. So we're going to cover these things. We're going to cover setting up and installing Jasmine with Rails, a quick run through of some Jasmine features. So show you some examples with Backbone, and then we're going to do something else new that I've never done before, and that's a little live coding in front of people. So this is going to be fun.
Brave.
Yeah, I know. So this is the new hotness. This was formerly called Teabag. It is a yes, I know. It is a JavaScript light, or is a Ruby gem that allows you to run multiple JavaScript testing frameworks. It defaults to Jasmine, but you can also use Mocha or any other JavaScript testing framework. Oh, I forgot to ask, how many people here are writing JavaScript tests right now? Like, is this new? Okay, cool. And how many of you are using Backbone? Because this is going to be heavily Backbone, or have used Backbone. All right, cool. So this will be some new stuff. So if you have got questions, slow me down, ask, and you got a question?
Yeah. Did you mean it?
Huh?
Did you mean it about stopping you?
Yeah.
Teaspoons, how's that different than, maybe you're about to say this, but how's that different than just running like Jasmine if you want Jasmine?
Okay, so yeah, good question, right? Excellent question. I wouldn't even have thought to cover this. So what's great about this is once this is installed and you run your Teaspoon install and then you install Phantom.js, then you can go to localhost 3000 with your Rails server running, and you can see your tests, or you can type Teaspoon at the command line and it'll boot up a headless web server and run Phantom.js right there. And it integrates completely with the asset pipeline, so you can write CoffeeScript or whatever you want to. I don't know if you tried writing CoffeeScript with Jasmine. It's pretty much a pain. You have to get the Coffee Watcher, compile your CoffeeScripts down to JavaScript, and then after you compile them, then go to the index.js page and run them. And also you have to go in, and every time you add a file, you have to go and you have to add it to your Jasmine. So this is cool. This does all that for you. It just says, hey, include everything in the asset pipeline, and anything that has underscore spec in the spec JavaScript directory will get ran as a test. A lot of magic.
It's built-in headless testing support.
Yeah, through Phantom.js. Yeah, and we'll look at that in just a second. Here's some Jasmine basics. If y'all have never seen it before, it's a lot like RSpec. You describe something. You can give it a before each or an after each, and then you set an expectation here, and the ifs are ran, and that's what actually passes or fails. So, any questions about this? Very good. Cool. So it does some cool things like strict equalities. You can say to be or not to be, and that's triple equals in JavaScript. And it does equality, which is cool because it does double equals. If you just say to equal, we'll let 12. But if you have an object, you can say to equal and give it another object, and it will actually do a deep equals where it iterates over the object to make sure all the things are equal to the other thing. So pretty cool stuff. You can do some regular expression matching, which is neat. So if you got a string and you want to make sure it contains something, you can say to match. Undefineds are cool. You can check to see if something's undefined. It has a bunch of things, so I threw them up here. You can be null, truthy, falsy. You can contain things, so here's an array that contains things. You can less than, greater than, so we got e here is greater than pi, and or less than pi, and pi is greater than e. And then you can expect things to throw exceptions. So cool. It also has really simple spies. So, and this to me is one of the more powerful features, although a lot of people will go for things like sign-on. I really like the spies in Jasmine. They work. So here we've got an object foo, and when you call set bar, it sets bar on foo. And here we say, hey, we're going to spy on set bar and go ahead and call it through. And when we set bar to baz, not only will so it overwrites the function, but not only will it call the original function here, but it'll also check to see if the original function has been called. So here we're checking, hey, is this thing being called? And then right after that, we're expecting the thing is set to what we set it to. Pretty cool stuff. But what we're really here to talk about is testing Backbone mostly, which is pretty cool stuff. So this is a Backbone model. We don't have a lot of people in the audience that use it, so we'll talk a little bit about how these models work. Basically, a lot of this stuff here, like URL roots and defaults, are things that your model gets. So defaults are the things that say when I instantiate a new model, I want that to be the values if I don't set anything. And then I can define whatever methods I want to. Here we define toggle, and it calls this save complete, and it does the opposite of what the completed value is, and that comes from the server. So what this is going to do is it's actually going to go out to the to-do / the ID of this model's route and do an update. So it's very RESTful. So it just reaches out and saves the item to the server, and then whatever value it gets back, it sets it on it again. So it's really powerful because it gives you events on all these things. So when you set completed, it'll fire a change event for the model, and it'll fire a change complete event for the model and pass the completed value in. So you can bind to these things all over your application, and yeah, do cool stuff with them. They're pretty straightforward to test. Basically, when you test models, they're very unit-style tests. You come in here and you just say, hey, I want to make sure it's got the proper values. I'm testing my URL root, my defaults, and I also want to test my toggle here. I don't actually want to make a call to the server. So in this case here, I just go ahead and spy on save, and I trust that Backbone is going to do what it's supposed to do because it's got its own test suite. And I just make sure that save was called, and it was called with the right thing. So in this case, the defaults on the first slide, or we'll go back, the defaults were false. For completed. So when I instantiate this thing, it's false. So here I'm saying, hey, I'm going to spy on save, I'm going to toggle it, and I'm going to expect it to save it with true. So there it is. Pretty cool stuff. Collections. Am I going too fast?
What is spy? I'm sorry.
It's a, we'll go back to that. Yeah, cool. We're going to do a lot of this, so good question. Basically, to do is our object up here that we created in our before each. And you can see this bar to do up there, so it's outside of our closure. So we create this, and then each one of our tests, we're expecting that to do something happens on it. So here we have this save function that Backbone gives us. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that that's called when the toggle feature is called, and it's called with true in this case because it was false. So by saying spy on, what I've done is I've replaced the save function with an object literal that I can then ask questions about, like, hey, have you been called? What were you called with? Were you called with these things? You can make it set expectations like, were you called 3 times, right? So it's just basically a way to observe some sort of function. And the cool thing about the spies is if save did not exist, it would throw an error. It would say, hey, I'm trying to replace something that doesn't exist. We'll see that a little bit in a minute.
It's similar to test double.
It's very similar to test double. Yeah, or stub in our spec. Yeah, so you got collections here. Collections are very much like models, except for collections contain models. You can say things like collection.create, and it'll create models of the type of model that you specify, and you can do things with them. So here we're saying we ask this collection, what are your completed models? It'll give us all the ones that have a value of completed true. And we say, hey, collection, what are your remaining models? It'll give us I said a collection. It will return an array of all the things that are completed false. So it'll return an array. So cool stuff here. I don't know if you've noticed wrapping these things in closures, which if y'all aren't doing that in JavaScript, you should. Good practice. But cool stuff.
Can you explain why that's good practice?
Yeah, just you don't want to throw everything in the global namespace on Windows. So what we have here is we have basically namespaces here, app.collections. It's essentially just a namespace with tag to-dos on it. And then inside of this thing, we've got this closure. Now later on, I may want to say, okay, I need a private method or something I don't want to be called from outside of this, I can define that outside of to-dos. It's locked into this closure. I can call it from within here, and then I return to-dos down here, and then no one would have access to that private thing. It's basically the module pattern. Testing collections, pretty cool stuff. Same basics. Gets a little bit more complicated. Then models, it starts to become a fine line between unit testing and maybe some integration style testing, but it's still more unit testing than anything. So if you come through here, you can see we create our collection before, pretty standard stuff. You're going to see that a lot, and then we just go through and we set expectations. Of course, we make sure our defaults are good, and then we go down here and we say, hey, we're going to spy on the where. And we're going to expect completed where to be called with true and remaining where to be called with false. Once again, where is something that Backbone gives us. So we're not testing that. Now this is a little bit of a testing the implementation to make this unit test style. You could do more of an integration test style by saying, hey, I'm going to create my collection with some fixture data, and I expect that when I call completed that I have 5 completed, and when I call remaining, I have 3 remaining because I set it up that way. But I trust Backbone, and this is simple enough, so I just threw it in there like this. When we actually test in a minute, we'll actually look at these 2 functions and actually change them a little bit. And then views, and these are a little bit trickier. So there's a few things you got to know about views. One thing is that views a lot of times bind things to jQuery, and a lot of times bind to models. So back in the old day, you would say this.own or model.own change this.render, and what that would do is that would create a pointer from the model to the view, and then you would destroy the view. The model would still be in memory, and you would still have a pointer to the view, so garbage collection doesn't happen properly, and now you've got memory leaks. So this is the new style. It's in version of control, listen to, pretty cool stuff. You can say listen to the model and change and render, and now when I call remove on this view, it says, okay, everything that I'm listening to, unlisten to it. Now, one thing that you need to know though is that if you put something like this in initialize, so if I just put this listen to in the initialize, what's going to happen is that when I initialize this view, it's going to bind a function pointer to render. Now when I say, okay, I want to spy on render, it's a new object. So we still have a function pointer to the old object. So if that's an initialize, there's no way for me to test it without going up to the prototype, spying on the prototype, and then everything that's new would be overwritten. So what I've done is I pulled this down into a bind model function, and now what I can do is I can grab my view, I can manually call unlisten to, and then manually call bind model, and that will rebind to my spy, unbind from the original pointer, rebind to my spy's pointer, and then everything will work like we expect it to. Did everybody get that? Is that?
I got that you know what you're talking about.
Cool. Yeah, so here's some tests. We've got a to-do view, and before each one, we're going to go ahead and create a to-do, which has a model, and we're going to pass that into our view, and then come down here, and we're going to test, okay, first of all, we want to make sure that our view's an LI, because we're inserting it to a UL. We'll make sure that it uses a particular template. We've got that template specified, so we can just go out and grab it like this. JST is pretty cool. I don't know if y'all use that in Rails. If y'all use the EJS gem or the Echo Rails gem, which is the one, sorry. You can use Echo, you can use EJS. I'm actually using Haml Coffee Assets, which allows me to write Haml style syntax with CoffeeScript inside of it. It's really confusing. Yeah, it's pretty amazing though. I love Haml, I love CoffeeScript, so it gives me everything I want. But anyway, so these functions are pre-compiled. They're compiled into this object namespace JST, and they live on global. So in your browser, you can just say JST, and you can see all your templates. They're already compiled functions. They get compiled with the server, minified, served up, and then you can just call them down here. So when down here where we say, let's go back actually. Over here where we say this.template, and we pass in this model, which is this view's model, then our template here actually receives that object literal, and you can say this.model.completed, right, inside of our views. We'll look at that in a second. It's pretty cool stuff.
Do it. What he was, I think he was talking about with the initialize is if you put everything in initialize, you don't have access to it for tests, for like your unit testing. So if you break that out into another function, to its own function, you can test the results of that particular function, and then go ahead. So like bind model could actually be tested, and you can make sure that it does what it's supposed to do. And yes, it happens during the initialize, but you're not actually testing the initialize. You're testing whether or not bind model works.
Yep.
I think that's
exactly right. So what we'll do over here is that we will come down here. Here's yours. So this right here, I said, you know what? I'm going to show you an example with a prototype. So I come in here and I go ahead and grab app to do prototype, and I spy on the listen to on the prototype. Then I go ahead and instantiate a new view, and then I expect listen to be called with model change and view render. And this works. However, if I had done what I just was telling y'all, I could come in here and I could say, okay, I want to spy on app.bind to, and then, or I could spy on initialize, make sure bind to is called. Oh, I'm confused now. I'm confusing myself. I'll show you an example in a second. You'll be happy. So, so this is it for the slides. How am I doing on time? Really fast? Really slow?
fine.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah. Question.
Well, that would probably be a good time for you to switch out.
Why is it bad to modify the prototype in that way? Or to spy on the prototype?
Okay. Yeah. This is not good. So if I spy on the prototype here, I've overwritten the prototype. So then if I instantiate other views, right?
You get cleaned up after outside of the.
No, it doesn't.
Oh.
But the spies don't.
Not on the prototype, right? So up here, I'm saying before each one, make model a new model and view a new view.
Yeah.
But down here, I'm saying overwrite the prototype, and I'm never ever saying clean the prototype
Oh
up.
man.
So when you spy on something, it doesn't get unspied on. Ever.
I don't think that it automatically unwraps itself. You can unspy on something, but I think you would have to put that in an after each call
Gotcha.
and say, this is the thing I want to unspy on.
Gotcha. So you want to be spying on things that you created in a before each that are just going to go out of scope. You're not going to use them.
Exactly. So if I have a to-do here, or to-do view, I can spy on the to-do view, and then before each happens again, it erases it, creates a new one, and that spy goes away. Garbage collection happens, and everything's good. That wasn't so bad. All right. So, I want to show you. So let's run teaspoon. So here we go. We pick up the Rails server, and it runs, and we've got a failure. So this is running from the command line. Runs fairly quick, as JavaScript always does. And I also want to show y'all this failing in the browser. So this is what the browser looks like, and it happens so fast you can't even tell. It's actually happening in a quarter of a second. Every time I hit refresh, you'll see that time change. So it happened in a third second that time, all of our tests. So we have 11 passes and one that's failing right now. Let me show you the app we're working on. Y'all probably seen the to-do app before. So this is the standard to-do MVC app. I just ported it to Rails and CoffeeScript. It does some cool things. I can add stuff here. Right, and then I can come in here and I can delete it. Actually, let's do this. So y'all believe me. I add it, and then I refresh the page. And when it refreshes, the thing's still there because it went to the server and grabbed it and made a network request. And here it is right here. Those are my to-dos. So if I hit delete here, you can see right here it pops up with the server and it deleted it. Of course, the standard destroy action just renders OK. Or actually, it renders head OK, which is like 204, I think, or something. That's not 204, it's 2 something anyways. But anyways, it returns nothing but a response. It says everything is good. So cool. So this is what we can do, and then over here I can say, okay, I've got my to-dos collection, which I put on the global namespace to show y'all. Everything's event-driven. I'm going to make a new to-do, and its title is going to be awesome. I create that thing, and bam, he pops up in my list because he's event-driven. So I added something to my collection, it shows up in my list. Pretty powerful. And if I wanted to add something that was completed, there's an awesome that's completed. Right? Cool stuff.
What environment are you running this in? I'm really new to all this.
This is Chrome. Google Chrome. This is just a web browser. Hmm?
Where is that inside?
Go into a little bit about what you're using the inspector.
Okay.
Just so everybody knows.
Yeah, no problem. Let me turn.
Right,
I gotta
I've
do
seen
the
that
view.
part.
Exit presentation mode.
Is it presentation mode? Built into
So
Chrome, or is
this
it a
is
plugin?
just the.
Oh, okay.
So here's Chrome, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go here to the inspector and go to the console. Now you're probably used to seeing it at the bottom. Actually, oh, that's not it. And now it's going to remember.
Oh, okay.
You can go here though, and you can say, okay, I want this at the bottom.
Right. Yeah, okay.
So
Actually, that's a really handy tool for debugging if you haven't used it.
I use the crap out of it every day.
yeah, so like it's really cool because like I'm inspecting this element and I can see where the padding and everything is. This is good for designers. And then of course down here in the console, it's really great.
If you press escape in the elements view, it'll pop up the console at the bottom.
Oh, I didn't know that. Cool. So I'm just deleting these things, and they're actually going out this server. Oh, I didn't know if y'all noticed or not. It says 4 items left at the bottom. I checked something. It says I've got 1 complete and 3 left. And if I click clear complete, it'll delete that one. Oh, sorry, Stuart. It's down here at the bottom. So you got clear complete and 3 items left to do. If I check it again instantaneously. Everything updates. 4 items left, and that disappears. So it's all completely and totally event driven, and it's all based off of my model state. So pretty cool stuff.
Okay, so localhost 3000 is. Okay.
Oh, no. Oh, no problem. Yeah. Okay. So we're running Rails.
It's a WebRick or Thin or Mongrel, some Rails compatible.
Okay,
Yep.
So then when you go to the console, that's JavaScript that's running in the browser. So.
Yeah. So I have a Rails app here, and let's go look at the controller. And I just scaffolded a controller, and this was our to-dos controller. So here's our to-do items right here. This is just standard. I scaffold the Rails 4.
Go into the console. Are you talking about like when he's in console and
Okay.
he's running Teaspoon in console? Like what's the environment there?
What is this language? I'm sorry.
This is Ruby here. This is Ruby.
Okay.
We were looking at JavaScript, and we're about to jump into CoffeeScript, so it's about to blow everybody's mind, especially mine because I love CoffeeScript.
Good. Show him the console real quick. that he
Rails
knows
console?
When you're running Teaspoon,
CLN.
so
I
just
just-
explain to him what's happening.
Okay, hold on a minute. You had this program,
Mm-hmm.
and that's in Ruby.
Yes.
Okay.
This is our server. This is our web app.
And Ruby, okay. I'm coming from PHP.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. It's fine. So I've got a controller, and what it does is it does RESTful actions, and I've got a database that it's connected to, and all it does with these RESTful actions is it'll give me a list of to-dos.
Okay, hold on. Ruby's an interpreter, or is it how are you running this thing?
Rails, Ruby on Rails.
Okay, what's Rails?
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So Rails is like I'd say the most mainstream or popular Ruby server. It's
So it's kind of like Node.js?
it's a framework.
It's a framework.
It is kind of like Node.js. This is, but it's, it is, it does a lot out of the box for you. Like it's what's a PHP? Is it cake? Cake. It's like cake. So what we've got here is that when we say get on the to-do item, so we go to /to-dos, that's a get request. It's going to respond with the index action. And the index action here is just going to go to our database and grab all the to-do items and return those as JSON. And then if we say, okay, well, we want to show one of them, and I say, go to in my browser, /to-dos to-do item /1, that's going to respond with showing the one to-do item, the to-do item with the ID of 1. If I said 15, it'd be the to-do item with the ID of 15. Then create is going to, if I post to the /to-dos here, it's going to create a to-do in my system. And then update, if I patch or put now on Rails 4, it's going to take the one that's in the system and update it. And then there's also destroy, which will take the one that I say like /to-do item /5 destroy. That will delete that from the database or perform the destroy action.
Inbound requests come in, and a router actually, or routes actually are handled, and then they're directed to particular controllers.
Okay,
And then
so,
the controller responds based on the HTTP request time. So if it's a get, it assumes that you mean an index unless you've specified a different route for an index.
So here I go to /to-do items. Of course, I would not say .json in a jQuery request. It would just make a JSON request, but I can say .json here, and this is a JSON string
okay,
that it
so
returns.
there's a whole bunch of JavaScript somewhere.
This is Ruby, but it's returning a JavaScript object.
Right, but I mean, you just put some JavaScript into the Chrome console.
Yes.
And that was handled by some whole bunch of JavaScript somewhere.
Yeah, so Backbone.js says, oh, I know that this is a RESTful action, and here's my endpoint. And it doesn't matter if that's Ruby or PHP or whatever, as long as it conforms to those RESTful actions. It says, I know how to handle that, and it made a jQuery request under the hood that populated the to-dos with this to-dos index, and then knows how to create to-dos and delete to-dos because it knows how those RESTful actions are structured on the
You're
server.
building on lots of levels of magic.
Yes.
Yes. More magic than a David Copperfield.
Yes. Lots of stuff going on here. This is our to-do app,
Failing test.
and we have a failing test.
Driving me insane.
So if we look here, it says that the failing test is on our to-dos filtering remaining. Of course, you saw the app work. So what I've done here is I've wrote an expectation, this remaining expectation at the bottom, and it says, hey, I'm going to spy on the incomplete. When I call to-dos remaining, I'm expecting incomplete to have been called. Okay, this is great, but what my remaining is doing is it's calling where normally this wouldn't even exist. Let's delete it. I just did it so that you can see the app working. Let's run it. So this time when I run it, because it wouldn't exist normally because I would run it the first time, it says, hey, is incomplete method does not exist. Yay. So I go back and I say, okay, well, let's get rid of the first level. Oh, sorry, I'm spying on this incomplete. No, is incomplete, is not. So we'll call remaining. Remaining goes up. You know what? I expected to spy, but I got undefined. All right, cool. To-dos remaining is defined, but I'm expecting to-do call incomplete. So I go, okay, well, this is great. So we're going to do the same thing we did up here. Is incomplete. We'll go back, run our test. It says, hey, is incomplete, doesn't exist. And I go, oh, okay, well, I wanted to call that on my to-do. So let me go to my to-do model. All right, super. I need to define, this is the to-do. I need to define is incomplete. If anybody wants to see the JavaScript this is producing, I'll be more than happy to show you. So what I want to do here is I want to say I want to get the models. So this is this.get completed. Oh, no, completed. What am I doing? But I want to not that because I want it incomplete. Actually, it's CoffeeScript, so let's not that. And now we're passing all the way down to the stack. Pretty cool stuff. Yeah, but what I probably should have done here, and I'm live coding, so I should have probably described as incomplete.
Missing some parentheses there. After is incomplete. Unless CoffeeScript is.
No, it's expected function to be true. Yep, you're right. Sorry. Yay! So we got a passing test, and we can do the exact opposite because we want to test drive things all the way down. Type. Yay, another passing test.
I didn't see that fail.
Oh, come
It's
on.
supposed to be red green.
I was about to say that was straight green. I don't know. Hey.
That's cheating, sir. That's cheating.
Well, we actually test drove it from the other thing, from the to-dos collection, so
Sure you did.
but the reason I want to do it this way is because now I can refactor, and I go, you know what? I like the idea of having a completed. Ooh, I'm really nervous writing this stuff. Everything still passes. Now, if I go to other things like my to-do view, I know there's some things, I know that the person who wrote this did not test drive this because of the way it's written. But there's things in here.
23 is my favorite.
Huh?
23 is my favorite.
Yeah. Yes. So now I can do things like completed because I wrote that function now. And now if I ever change what completed is on the server or anything else, I've got this function, I change it in my model, I don't have to update any of the code, everything's dry. This is not very dry. This is all over the place in here.
You just got high standards, man.
Anyways, there it is again. Everything still passes. Yay. And of course we want to make sure to do a smoke test. Fresh, everything still works. Yay. Alright. Alright, cool. So yeah, so now we're looking at this to-do view, and there's a lot of crazy stuff here. What are we doing on time?
You have as much time as you need.
Well, okay, so I can go two directions here. I can either write an expectation that for this view, because there's a lot of expectations that can be written, if somebody has questions about them. In fact, I'll just close this out and let you look at the view for a second. Or I can just answer questions.
What's the
Your
benefit
fault.
of using CoffeeScript?
Huh? Oh, so yeah, this right here. Yeah, there's a lot of haters in the house.
Oh man, scroll down.
So this is what the CoffeeScript compiles to, and so what I get here is I get all my closures and everything, and I said, hey, you should be writing these
You
earlier.
gotta skip the class part. That's the ugly part.
Yeah. So, but when I say class here, even though there are no classes in JavaScript, what it actually does is it actually takes the prototype and it copies all of the properties from the prototype onto the child and does proper prototypal inheritance. So I can say class extends Backbone view, I get proper prototypal inheritance, and I don't have to do crazy stuff like Backbone.view.extend or do the things manually. It can get pretty crazy, especially if you got a lot of properties going into like an initializer or a constructor, and then you want to super that. Well, there's no way to say super, so you have to like get the constructors thing. You got to apply the things that came in, and there's like 20 lines of code just to do proper inheritance in JavaScript. So this just is like, you know, it's syntactic sugar. The class is, but that's not really what makes JavaScript great. What makes JavaScript great is that it, in my opinion, it fixes a lot of JavaScript's warts.
Semicolons.
Yeah, so right here I get a constructor function, pretty cool stuff, and then it does all the right things. It creates everything on my prototypes like I would expect it to be, and I don't have to say things like var, because if I write something, it automatically does variable hoisting for me, shoves them to the top of the function, that way I don't forget what they're supposed to do, and allows me to do things throughout it. It's really smart. Does some cool stuff. So that's the advantage to CoffeeScript, is that it fixes JavaScript's warts. In fact, ECMAScript 6, if you've been following the blogs or anything, like almost everything ECMAScript 6 is doing is just copying CoffeeScript. Like it's like 90% of it is just CoffeeScript. So in 2016, you won't have to write CoffeeScript anymore. Yay. Maybe later than that. Other questions?
Are we asking questions or are we refactoring?
I don't know. I'm game.
Questions?
I'm game for whatever.
I do have some questions.
Okay.
When you run teaspoon from the command line,
Yes.
does it recompile the assets?
Yes. It uses the
Every
asset
time? So that slows it down considerably.
It does if you're using CoffeeScript. If you're just using JavaScript, there's really nothing to compile. Right?
If you're in the browser, the asset pipeline handles the cache.
Are you doing this with Rails 4 or are you doing this with Rails 3?
Both? You answer for each.
Okay. It's much faster with Rails 4. There is a gem for Rails 3 that'll speed it up, but it keeps a table of hashes of things that are compiled, and it just basically takes the file, hashes it, and if the hash hasn't changed, it doesn't recompile it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
It didn't used to do that, did it?
It didn't do that in Rails 3. There is a gem that'll do that for you. Rails 4 does that out of the box.
Neat.
Other questions? I think I'm going to wrap up. I'm not going to refactor anymore, unless somebody just begs me to refactor. So,
I've got a question about Teaspoon.
okay.
Does it have the ability to output different formats? Like, could it output JUnit XML from the command line? So you can use Teaspoon to run Jasmine tests from the command line, and it'll output whatever it output, dots or whatever.
Yeah, there's several different formatters.
Yeah, I guess
Tap out is one of them.
I think it's. Let's see if we can find the Teaspoon gem. I turned my internet off because I didn't want to get interrupted. Yeah, there's some options. You should go to the Teaspoon gem and look at it. There's probably like 6 or 7 built-in outputters, and then there's a lot of people that are writing plugins, but tap out is definitely one of them. And I wonder if it's just format. Let's see. Will that work? It does. I'm a good guesser.
formatters, dot, tap Y, sways.
Yeah, let's try dash F tap Y.
Random quote from Patrick Swayze or Oprah. What? One of the formats is Swayze or Oprah.
That's nice. I'm very pleased with this.
By the
need to hear
way,
this way,
you guys
Joe.
did not use the hipster lipsum.
We get
You need to.
it outputs it in a different format.
Sweet.
There we go.
Do Swayze. Real fast.
And what was it?
Swayze or Oprah.
It might tap complete. It'd be awesome.
That's Swayze.
Sweet.
Oh no, like literally like the string
Swayze
underscore
underscore
Oprah, yeah.
That's
So said
How do you spell Swayze?
SWAYZE. Or Oprah.
No, Oprah.
I spell it with an H.
Yeah, there's no
No
E.
E.
Take out the E.
Y'all have got the one thing I'm bad at, and you got me doing it spelling. I love to work hard.
Oh, you have to guess.
That's so good.
Do I get random ones every time?
Yeah.
Man, it's actually difficult.
What, winning is for me. Oh, that's really hard.
Where are the answers?
So inspirational.
Cool. Is that what you wanted to know? Or are you looking for XML? I don't know if there's an XML out there.
Yo, I mean, it's good to know that there are formatters there for this plugin or something. We just got a build server that only knows JUnit, so I'm curious if we could.
Well, so are you running rake when you deploy your Rails stuff? Like, or do you have a CI running rake? Because you can just add that to the default. You can add Teaspoon to the default rake task. Watch this. Rake, Teaspoon, and it does what you think. So you add Teaspoon to the default rake task. So when you type rake to run any
yeah,
rake
it's just
test,
that the thing that tells us whether we have failing tests or not only knows how to read JUnit XML to parse test output. So for that to work, we have to get our tests to output JUnit XML.
probably somebody's out there got it.
Yeah.
If you wanted to do like integration style testing, would Jasmine be the tool you reach for, or would you go elsewhere?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Just multiple expectations inside of an init block, or
So you said integration style? Yeah. So like one of the things you can do is you could just instantiate a view, and then you could just click an element on it and expect that something appeared on it. So say you have a button that says +1, and it adds a class to something and adds a +1, and you say, hey, click this, and the element should have a +1 class, right? And done. So that's integration style as close as you can get without actually writing. Now the hard thing, and I didn't show you all this because it's more difficult and outside the scope of this. The hard thing to test is routing, or routers, backbone routers. So when you're changing the hashtag or the URL in your browser, you really need like copy bar. So something to reach from that side. Cool. Any other questions?
Is the Rails server running and functional? Like you were talking about doing integration tests in Jasmine. If you're testing JavaScript that fires an AJAX request and expects the Rails server to be there and returns certain data, like is that all there in your Jasmine tests, or is it just Jasmine?
Yeah, I would if I was going to do that, I would use Cucumber and Capybara, or just Capybara. Yeah, I probably wouldn't write that there. Now, what you can do is it's really easy with this gem here. So it's in I forgot where it is. I think it's in spec JavaScript. Yeah, it's spec helper in here. So I've enabled this, even though we didn't use it, the Jasmine jQuery. So this thing says things like, I can say things like, get a jQuery element, say like should have CSS, and give it a CSS selector. But right here is sign on. So with sign on, you can, if I enabled sign on, enable it. So if I enable sign on, now I can use sign on, and sign on will mock AJAX requests. You got to be careful though; it won't run in IE8. It doesn't emulate XML HTTP, so IE8 and back it won't run in for the AJAX request. But I can go ahead and say, hey, I'm going to create a fake server, and anything that asks for this, anytime I ask for an AJAX request at this point, I'm going to return this fixture data.
So
and
it's like
then
webmock for
exactly. Yeah. Cool.